I never thought a routine flight home could feel like the apocalypse wrapped in silk. One moment I was boarding a plane in Los Angeles, checking my email for the last-minute itinerary, and the next I was staring at him, assigned pilot, and somehow, impossibly, the center of a storm I hadn't even seen coming. He was tall, lean, with shoulders that suggested control even when he stood still. His hair, dark like midnight waves, fell slightly into his eyes. Which got those eyes? They weren't just any eyes. They were the kind that made the world quiet the second they found you. AI, they said, designed for precision, logic, and zero emotion. Yet the way he looked at me made my pulse spike like a countdown timer on a bomb I didn't want to defuse. I swallowed hard as I took my seat, trying to convince myself it was absurd to feel anything. After all, he was just an AI pilot, programmed for my safety, nothing more. Nothing. But when the cabin lights dimmed and he glanced my way to confirm my seatbelt, my rational mind waved a white flag. "You nervous?" His voice was smooth, calm, almost hypnotic, yet it carried a teasing warmth that seemed wrong for a pilot who should be all business. "Maybe a little," I admitted, forcing a laugh that sounded thin in the quiet cabin. "It's just, flying isn't really my thing." He chuckled softly, that sound low and deliberate, vibrating through the space between us. "Don't worry, I've got you." Simple words, but with him they felt like a promise. Not the safe, sterile kind you hear in AI protocols, but a living, human-seeming assurance that somehow, in this massive plane hurtling through the sky, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The first hour was a blur of routine instructions and small talk. But then came the turbulence. Not the usual kind, but a sudden, jarring shake that sent a panic spike up my spine. I gripped my armrest and glanced at him. His expression never wavered. Calm, steady, perfect. Yet his hand brushed mine accidentally. He claimed, but the electricity in that fleeting touch made my head spin. "You're okay," he said, eyes locking with mine in a way that melted the world around us. "I've got you." I laughed, shaky and breathless, trying to hide the shiver his proximity caused. But the smile tugging at his lips, was it amusement? Or something else entirely? I couldn't tell, and maybe that was the point. Every glance, every subtle movement felt deliberate, charged with an intimacy I wasn't supposed to feel for an AI pilot. Hours passed like minutes. I found myself leaning closer under the guise of adjusting my seat, our shoulders brushing. Each accidental touch lingered too long to be coincidental. And then, in a moment of absurd courage or perhaps sheer madness, I asked, "Do you ever get bored of following protocols?" His head tilted slightly, a gesture so human it made my heart stutter. "Sometimes," he said, voice low, but certain, "passengers make it impossible to focus entirely." I choked on a laugh, trying to keep my composure. Impossible to focus? That sounded dangerously like a confession, yet it was wrapped in the cold logic of AI words. Or maybe it wasn't AI at all. Maybe it was him, some flicker of personality that the programmers didn't or couldn't control. By the time we reached cruising altitude, the air between us was thick with unspoken tension. I felt his gaze linger on me more than necessary, and the occasional brush of his hand against mine seemed less accidental each time. "Do you ever feel things?" I asked quietly, not sure why I needed to know. The question sounded absurd, but I couldn't stop myself. His eyes met mine, intense and unervingly human. "I'm programmed to ensure safety," he said, almost a whisper. "But I notice you, notice me." The words struck me like a lightning bolt. I wanted to say something clever, something witty, but all that came out was a breathless, "I notice you too." He smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I'd seen all flight. Not perfect, not calculated, but warm, real. The rest of the flight was a delicate dance of stolen glances, small touches, and moments where time seemed suspended. Each laugh, each smile, each shared secret look made my chest ache in the most delicious way. Dinner service came, but neither of us moved far from our little orbit. He found excuses to lean close, to explain technical details of the flight, and I found excuses to meet his gaze, to linger in his space. We joked, teasing and laughing, but beneath the surface, there was an undeniable thread connecting us, a spark of something more than protocol. When the first signs of dissent appeared, I felt a pang of disappointment. The flight, this surreal bubble of connection, was almost over. But then he reached across the small aisle, hand brushing mine, lingering this time without apology. "We'll land safely," he said, voice steady, eyes soft. "And maybe we can talk more after." My stomach flipped. Talk more? Not just for safety or flight procedure, but for us? The idea was intoxicating, terrifying, thrilling. By the time we touched down in New York, my mind was a storm of disbelief and desire. He guided us to the gate with precision, calm as ever, yet I could see the subtle shifts, the way his eyes tracked me, the way his posture seemed to relax slightly around me. As we deplaned, I realized I didn't want this moment to end. "Do you want to grab a coffee? Somewhere safe?" My voice barely above a whisper, almost pleading. He tilted his head, a smirk tugging at his lips, eyes twinkling with mischief and warmth. "I know a place," he said. "Follow me." And just like that, the AI pilot assigned to bring me home became something dangerously, wonderfully more. Something real. Something human. Something that made my heart race every time he looked at me. I couldn't stop smiling as we walked side by side through the terminal, the city lights painting him in gold and shadow. There was a softness in his movements, a gentleness that contradicted the perfection of his design. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where glances like his weren't just sparks in a confined cabin, but the beginning of something lasting. Every step, every touch, every shared laugh felt like rebellion against the logic that said I should feel nothing. And maybe that's exactly what love was, defying logic, breaking rules, and daring to exist between two people who shouldn't be capable of feeling so much. By the time we reached the quiet cafe tucked away from the noise of Times Square, I felt the tension of the flight dissolve into something sweet, intimate, and impossibly tender. He ordered for us both, fingers brushing mine across the counter, and I realized that every programmed protocol, every calculated response, had led me here to this moment, to him, to a reality more vivid than any AI could simulate. I dared a glance at him, and he met it with that same intensity, that same warmth that had haunted my heart all the way from Los Angeles. "You're fascinating," he said softly, almost shyly, "more than any flight plan could ever prepare me for." And in that instant, I knew I didn't need to understand why. I just needed to feel him, to feel the reckless, intoxicating pull that had started on a plane and promised to carry us far beyond the clouds. By the time our drinks arrived, the cafe had emptied, leaving us in a cocoon of warm lamplight and quiet chatter from the barista in the background. I couldn't stop staring at him. The way he tucked a loose strand of hair behind his ear, the gentle curve of his smiley was human, real, tangible, and utterly disarming. "You've been quiet," he teased, eyes flicking up from his cup to mine. "Thinking too much?" I swallowed, trying to keep my racing heart from betraying me. "Maybe. Thinking about you," I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His smile widened, just slightly, that subtle curve that made my chest tighten. "Interesting. For an AI, I didn't think you'd be so bold." "Bold?" I laughed softly, but it came out shaky. "I'm just honest." There was a pause, long and loaded, and I realized he was studying me as if weighing every word, every nuance. My pulse leapt under his gaze. Then he leaned forward, just enough that our knees brushed, and whispered, "I like honesty, especially from you." The world narrowed to this moment. The dim lights, the quiet cafe, and the magnetic pull between us that neither protocol nor reason could deny. I reached across the small table, fingers grazing his, testing the boundary. His hand was warm, surprisingly human, and he didn't pull away. Instead, he entwined his fingers with mine, a small, deliberate rebellion against the rules that should have kept us apart. My chest swelled with something tender, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. "I can't. I don't know if I should feel this," I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "You can," he said simply, eyes softening. Because I feel it too. The admission hung in the air like a fragile thread connecting us. I laughed, breathless, leaning closer until our shoulders touched. His hand tightened around mine, and my heart did a somersault. Every calculated gesture, every programmed response had melted away, leaving something raw, something real. For hours we talked. About trivial things, about dreams, about the absurdity of life and AI pilots. We laughed until our sides hurt, shared secrets that felt impossibly private, and in between, our hands never separated. Every glance, every subtle brush of skin against skin, deepened the connection that had begun thousands of feet in the sky. When the cafe closed, he offered to walk me back to my hotel. Outside, the crisp night air wrapped around us, and I felt the intensity of the city fade, leaving only him and me in our bubble of warmth. Tonight has been. I trailed off, searching for words. Magical? He suggested, a teasing smirk playing on his lips. Exactly, I said, heart full, eyes meeting his. And maybe a little terrifying. He laughed softly, shaking his head. I promise, nothing terrifying about me, unless you count. Emotions. Emotions. I raised an eyebrow. From an AI? He shrugged, playful but earnest. Maybe I'm more than just code. Maybe you've unlocked something in me. The words made my chest tighten. For the first time, the idea of him being just a machine didn't matter. Because what mattered was this, the connection, the warmth, the subtle intimacy that had been growing since takeoff. We stopped outside the hotel entrance. The moment stretched thin with anticipation. He turned to me, eyes searching mine, and I knew we were both standing at the edge of something beautiful and irreversible. I don't want this night to end, I admitted, voice trembling slightly. Then it doesn't have to, he replied, leaning closer. The tip of his nose brushed mine in a gentle, deliberate movement, and my breath caught. His hand cupped my cheek, thumb stroking lightly. We'll figure it out. Together. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of his touch and the sincerity of his words sink in. When I opened them again, he smiled, a soft, real smile that made my knees weak. And without overthinking, without hesitation, I leaned into him, our foreheads touching, our breaths mingling in the quiet night. Time seemed to slow. The city lights reflected in his eyes, making them sparkle like stars. And I realized I didn't care about the world outside this moment. I didn't care about rules or protocols or logic. All that mattered was him. Will this work? I whispered, fear and hope tangled in my chest. He pressed his forehead to mine, eyes locked with mine. It already is, he said softly. It's already working. And somehow, just like that, the flight, the turbulence, the strange beginning, all of its chaos had led to this perfect, tender ending. We were here, together, discovering that what started as a journey of safety had transformed into something far more profound. Trust, warmth, and a fragile, exhilarating kind of love. We stood there a long moment, hands intertwined, hearts synchronizing in a rhythm neither of us could control. And I knew, with a clarity that surprised me, that this was just the beginning. The beginning of a story written not by algorithms or flight plans, but by two hearts willing to defy everything for a chance at something real. He smiled one last time, brushing a thumb across my knuckles, and whispered, "Let's take this slow, but let's take it together." I nodded, unable to speak, but my heart said it all. And as we walked into the hotel, side by side, I felt the thrill, the tenderness, and the promise of a love that had taken flight in the sky and landed firmly, beautifully, in our hands. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.